Sunday, 7th of December 2003, started like any other day for the Morcombe brothers. Daniel, his twin brother Bradley, and older brother Dean awoke early as they worked part-time on a neighboring property, picking passion fruit. The Morcombe family had a work Christmas function in Brisbane later that day, but due to the weather, the boys started work later than originally organized. But after discussing with their parents, Bruce and Denise, the boys decided they would go home after they had finished work, instead of attending the work function with their parents. At 9:45, Judith Paxton, the owner of the neighboring property, drove Daniel and Bradley back to their home on the farm quad bike, while older brother Dean had already made his way home prior to the other boys. 13-year-old Daniel told his brothers that he was going to catch the bus down to the local shopping center to get a haircut and buy Christmas presents for his parents. Around 1 p.m, he walked the 1.3 kilometers from his home to the Namba Connection Road in order to catch a bus to the Sunshine Plaza shopping center. Although this was not an official designated bus stop, Daniel and his brothers had caught the bus from here many times before. Unbeknown to Daniel, the bus he was waiting for had broken down further up the road, and a replacement bus was sent to pick up the passengers and continue the route to the shopping center. But unfortunately, as they were behind schedule and where Daniel patiently waited was an unofficial bus stop, the driver never stopped, leaving Daniel and his witnesses report an older man waiting by the side of the road. Although the driver had stated he had radioed through to the depot to organize another bus to collect the missed passengers. By the time the next bus arrived, the bus stop was empty, unaware to anyone. The man who was thought to be waiting for the bus alongside 13-year-old Daniel was Brett Peter Cowan, a convicted child rapist with a depraved past. Reports state that somehow Cowan has convinced Daniel that there was no more buses coming and that he would give him a lift up to the shopping center. But sadly, for Daniel and his family, he would never make it that far. Bruce and Denise returned home from their work Christmas function about 4 p.m. that afternoon. Shortly after, Denise drove to the bus stop to pick up Daniel, but he did not get off the bus. Denise returned to the bus stop an hour later, as she thought he must have decided to catch the last bus home, but panic started to set in when Daniel was not on that bus either. After returning home, Bruce joined Denise, and they headed down to the Sunshine Plaza to search for Daniel. They made inquiries with the bus company, in which they were informed that all buses were running on schedule. So if Daniel had got on the last bus, he should have been at the bus stop when Denise returned the second time. After spending some time looking and no sign of Daniel, they went straight to the local police station. Arriving around 7:30 p.m, they were met by Sergeant Robbie Munn. Police took details in regards to Daniel's physical appearance, family relationships, and general well-being. In return, Denise couldn't stress enough to the officers that this is very out of character for Daniel. And in the past, if he was ever running late, he would phone his parents to let them know. Once home from the police station, they began contacting Daniel's school friends, in hoping that someone had seen or heard from him, but no one had. They checked around their hobby farm sheds, and even went back to the overpass bus stops, and searched again with flashlights. But there was no sign of Daniel anywhere. Sergeant Munn had phoned Bruce and Denise at 10 p.m, and again at 10:40, inquiring whether Daniel had returned home. At 11 p.m, another officer had called, and suggested that Mr. and Mrs. Morcombe make a formal report at 8 a.m. the following morning, when the station opened. Upon the first sign of light the following morning, Bruce and Denise proceeded to conduct their own searches, rechecking the bus stops, the shopping plaza, and the entire path Daniel would have taken to get to and from the bus stop. Then, at 8 a.m, they went to the Palmwoods police station to file a missing persons report. Sergeant Davison had established, through calls to the bus company, that a boy matching Daniel's appearance had been seen at the overpass bus stop the previous day. He then informed the Morcombes that Daniel was also seen in the company of an older man. Detective Senior Sergeant Schmidt was informed of Daniel's disappearance on December 8th and became responsible for the police investigation. Following the first 72 hours after the investigation began, the State Emergency Service performed searches in the immediate area, as well as police divers carrying out water searches. Door knocks of residences and businesses were carried out, and forensic examinations were conducted of the overpass. The police investigation into Daniel's disappearance began on the 8th of December, with over 100 police officers involved and over 10,000 individuals were interviewed. The police soon identified over 33 persons of interest who may have played a role in Daniel's disappearance, which then increased to 35 by the time the inquest formally started. After hearing evidence from investigators regarding each person of interest, it was decided that 6 of them should be called to attend and give evidence. One of those 6 was Brett Peter Cowan. Cowan was born in September 1969 in Bunbury, Western Australia. His parents, Marlene, an RSL worker, and Peter, an Australian Army major and Vietnam veteran. Cowan was one of 4 boys. At 18 years old, he sexually assaulted a 7-year-old boy and was sentenced to 2 years in prison, but would only go on to serve half of that sentence. Then, in 1993, while living at a caravan park in Darwin, he lured a 6-year-old boy into an abandoned car yard and carried out his deprived fantasies. Miraculously, the young boy survived. Cowan would then be served another 7-year prison sentence. Now back to Daniel's story. By the coronial inquest in 2010 and 2011, new evidence put convicted child molester Brett Peter Cowan firmly in the spotlight. Now aged 44, Cowan had been a suspect from day one, but was partially ruled out when police concluded that due to his alibi, he would have only had half an hour to commit the offense. However, his alibi would later fall apart at the inquest, when his drug dealer admitted that they did not recall seeing Cowan that afternoon, as he had previously stated. By the time Cowan had finished testifying, police were given the go-ahead to an undercover police operation. In April 2011, Cowan boarded a plane to Perth. While on that flight, he began chatting to the friendly young man who was seated next to him. By the end of the flight, Cowan and his new friend Joe had exchanged phone numbers and met several times over the following weeks. Little did Cowan know, Joe was actually an undercover police officer. Joe and his friends led Cowan to believe they were members in a powerful criminal organization and could help him get back on his feet financially. In return, he would help them carry out certain jobs, which would include trafficking weapons, bribing custom officers, and illegal crayfish. After completing a few jobs, Cowan was told he could earn up to $100,000 on their next big job, but told him there was a catch. As they had learned, he would be subpoenaed for another probe into Daniel's disappearance. A meeting was set up for Cowan and what they called the Big Boss, in which Cowan was informed he would be dropped from their organization unless he confessed in regards to Daniel, giving him the idea that they needed to know any details in case there was still evidence that would need to be cleaned up. "Yeah, okay, yeah, I did it," Cowan stated. He then went on to describe how he had lured 13-year-old Daniel into his car, driven him to an isolated spot, removed his pants, and attempted to sexually assault him. Cowan admitted that when Daniel resisted, he panicked and proceeded to choke him. Then, he dumped his body at the base of an embankment at an old sand mining pit. Cowan's chilling confession was recorded on a hidden camera and was played at his trial almost 3 years later. Over the next few days, Cowan led the undercover police officers to the site of Morcombe's remains, and it was at the site several undercover police officers arrested Cowan. On the 13th of August 2011, Cowan was taken into custody and charged with Daniel Morcombe's murder and other offenses, including child stealing, deprivation of liberty, indecent treatment of a child under 16, and interfering with a corpse. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum 20-year non-parole period.